I got my Brewster a week ago, and I was in a theater last night for Spider-Man. So,
Oh, no spoilers. I'm going at what? I'm going in 4 hours.
oh, okay. Well, congratulations. Well, good. I'll help you fill the time of anticipation instead of
Yeah, I'm staying off
flooding the
social
internet and
media.
all spoilers. I'll
Yeah.
ask you questions about writing and keep your mind off of it.
Well, did you like it?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I mean, it's big. Don't expect Endgame, but all the fan service in the world. I was a happy camper when I left.
sweet. That's
It
all
was
I'm
a
looking for.
movie that finally convinced me no more 3D because I've been a big 3D fan for a while. And then I finally did virtual reality this year during quarantine. I finally went out and got a PS4 helmet. And like 3D doesn't do it for me anymore. It was so dark that I couldn't make out all of the actors' faces at all times, losing a lot of nuance. But all right, well, that's the last time I pay extra to get less movie.
This was you saw it in 3D this time?
Yeah, I hadn't seen a 3D movie since pre-quarantine. And that used to be something I was a big fan of. And I was one of the only people with a 3D TV when everyone else thought they were silly. And then I was like, wait, it's going away. Y'all aren't going to sell me more 3D movies for my beautiful 3D TV. And now I'm finally on camp. Nope, back to 2D now.
Yeah, it does take. There's a lot of lost brightness with 3D. Just the way the technology works. So it's I guess you're getting half the luminosity into each eye. But I think when it's done well, it's really immersive. But yeah, I'm like you. I think probably the last 3D film that I saw that I thought needed to be seen in 3D was Avatar, and I can't think of one since that really blew me away. But I used to opt for the 3D option more often and haven't in a while.
If and I'm not entirely unconvinced, it's not just an elaborate joke, but if the Avatar sequels ever truly come out, then I will probably see those in 3D. But just about anything else, I think it's going to be a pass for me.
Yeah, I'm worried about the how good the story's going to be of those, but I am looking forward to whatever James puts on the screen because I'll just go see whatever he does tech wise until he disappoints me. But even one of my favorite films of all time was The Abyss. Um,
Yes.
and so yeah, I'm a huge fan of his ability to film the impossible. I feel like there's nowhere to push that, so I'll be really impressed if he takes it to the next level because I think since Avatar, everyone's caught up to his ability, and then there's really not much new frontier to explore. But I've thought that a couple of times, and he's proven me wrong. So um, I'll go see that in whatever format he suggests. If he's like, you should see this in black and white with one eye closed, I trust him.
Stand on one leg. Sure.
Whatever you say, Jim.
There's a lot of directors where you can point to the movie that like maybe it's not a bad movie, but I don't like that as well as the others. I don't think there is one for him. I think they're all of that quality.
Yeah, because he did Aliens as well, right? The
Uh-huh.
second Alien film, Titanic, which um, that was another time that I just sat there just slack jawed. I knew where CGI was heading, but every now and then there's a moment that comes like 5 years earlier than you thought it would, and that was one of those moments for me that just how convincing the CGI was in that film. Um, and then Avatar again, I thought the story was just utter crap, but I didn't care. Like I was mesmerized by the visuals of that film. Seeing it in IMAX and 3D was just startling.
Well, they
Yeah,
released an image from one of the sequels this week, a couple of images, but one of them is of a daughter of the original couple. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. If we've got a whole new Natari character to follow around, yeah, we probably could get 3 or 4 sequels with a new story to tell.
yeah. It's a surprising move by him because everything he's done has been just to go to a different genre almost. Like he doesn't stick around to tell sequels and then to say, well, not only a sequel, I'm gonna like this is going to be a franchise. Um, I wonder if maybe just success of Avatar, the money that it made, had him um, give up on going off and creating new IP and doing other stuff. One of the things I love about Christopher Nolan is that his works all have a similar aesthetic, definitely a similar soundscape, but he doesn't stick around in any of his worlds, even though there's some similarities in how he tries to construct his worlds. But it was very strange just to see James say, "I'm just going to make a bunch more of these." But I'll watch them. At least
I have enough information to know one way or the other at this point, but I like to think that maybe, because we didn't get Titanic 2, and there was certainly enough money on the table. If we could have found an angle for Titanic 2, they would have. But I would think that at his stage, like what does he have to prove to anybody? So if he gets the offer that, hey, we will give you all the money, do anything you want. Oh, okay. And all I have to do is some way kind of related to Avatar a bit. Oh, sold. Sure.
Yeah.
It's an alien planet. We can go anywhere, tell any kind of story.
Yeah. I would love to have seen what he would have done if Disney would have handed him like 3 Star Wars films or something like that. The same way that he came into the Alien franchise and I think told the best of that franchise. But I guess it's just weird to be playing around in a world that no one really cares about. But maybe the sequels will make us care about that world and that story.
Well, I mean, we'll see. And I feel like this should be the start of the show because people will want to hear our thoughts on Avatar and James Cameron. Who wouldn't want to hear what
exactly.
Hugh Howey officially thinks that the story of Avatar is crap? That should be a headline somewhere.
I thought that's what the interview was about.
that's I don't even have questions about your books. I brought you on here to talk about it. Hi there, esteemed audience. Lovely to have you back with us. Couldn't be more excited. Hugh Howey, author of iZombie, also Wool, also Beacon 23, also Halfway Home, also all the best books, plus a bunch that are yet to come. Is back with us. Last time you and I talked, you told me that you thought it was a 98% chance that reality was a simulation. I was about 50-50 at that point. After all the events that have happened since we talked in May of 2020, plus the fact that you're here for a second conversation, I'm now in the 98% camp. It's definitely a simulation. Fair enough.
Welcome.
So you had made a joke that first time we talked that maybe this should have been episode 100, and I agreed with you. But just so happened that it had been such a haphazard thing on Twitter. You had mentioned you were interested in being on podcast, and I'm quick thinking me. I was like, oh my gosh, come on mine. And episode 67, episode 75, whatever. This is the time for a Hugh Howey episode. But I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun if we did something mathematically satisfying? And you're back here for episode 150. Did 46 episodes last year, so about 3.5 years from now, I'm going to maybe try and talk you into coming back for episode 300. Although, at any point, if you want to be co-host, done. And if that arrangement doesn't work for you, we'll all step down and you host. I'll be a little bit sad about it, but I know that esteemed audience is in the better trade, so that'll be fine.
I can't take over, but I can co-host sometime. I'll be the Ed McMahon guy who just sits on the side and laughs at everybody's jokes, makes them feel extra funny. Thanks for having me back, man. It's funny that you mentioned iZombie first. Of all my books, the one that I recommend people not to read if you check out the Amazon description.
Yeah, I made myself a promise. I went back and I enjoyed Wool for the 4th time this week. Because I figure, with the TV series coming out, there's this one little window, this Goldilocks zone, where it's still just your voice and my imagination without all the imagery that's going to be coming from the Apple television series. I thought, well, this is the time for me to enjoy it again. And already I know Tim Robbins is going to be playing Bernard, so I was thinking, Arlington Road style Tim Robbins. I know that's going to be amazing in the back of my mind. All that to say that last episode, episode 75, we had a pretty robust conversation about iZombie. We're going to talk about all kinds of fun stuff. I've got questions about all kinds of short stories and craft questions for you, but we'll definitely talk at least a little bit about Wool and about some other stuff that you've got going on. Well, why bury the lead? Let's start with the television series that's coming. Do we have any kind of ETA on when we can expect to see that on Apple?
I haven't heard any specific date, but I've heard discussion about how long it usually takes to get all the filming and the post done, and I imagine we're probably about a year away, maybe a little less than a year away. But we've been filming for about 4 months now, 3 months or so. There'll be a Christmas break coming up, and then we'll I think wrap hopefully in April. A couple of the big actors have already shot all of their scenes that they need for the first season, and I think we've got a cut of the first episode put together just to see the story flow. But yeah, a lot of work to be done. So a lot of shooting, a lot of sound effects and music and color correction and editing, just tons of work. So I imagine that by this time next year, we might have something on the air.
This
is a slow process
question for me. I'm not going to ask you things like who's playing this, who's playing that, that's not already announced. But do you know who's writing the music yet? Can you say that?
We have. I don't know that we've settled on that yet. So the nature of filming it in the UK with the tax breaks, and this is kind of true of every production now, like wherever they're filming, you have to use local everything pretty much. So it'll be someone based in the UK. I think we've actually, I can't name any names, but the director has someone from another country they were like dying to work with, and I think we're trying to figure out if that was possible. But yeah, stuff like that's still not settled.
Well, at this point, I know you're forever skeptical that anything will get made because you haven't sat through the premiere yet, but you have seen, sounds like a rough cut of the episode. You've been on the side and you helped build the set. Do you believe that there will at some point be a show called Wool at this point, or still not convinced?
Yeah, I'm starting to think it might be a possibility. I don't take anything for granted, but it would require another kind of black swan event like the pandemic to shut things down completely for this to be delayed at this point. It's just yeah, the amount of stuff that's in the can now that's actually been done makes me think that it'd be hard to stop it at this point. But we're living in a simulation, so somebody could come up with a way.
That's true. Although I would think if you just filmed a karaoke night with Tim Robbins and Rebecca Ferguson, you're at least going to put that on a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was just in LA for a meeting about another show that I'm. It's actually not an adaptation. It's like a brand new IP that I'm creating for AMC, writing a pilot for them the start of the year. And I went and hung out with the guy show running the Beacon 23 show, Zach Penn, who has written some of my favorite stuff. He wrote The Last Action Hero, one of my favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger films. He did
X-Men too?
Yeah, he did X-Men. He did Ready Player One, Free Guy, which I absolutely loved. But I was just getting, I don't really bug the people with Beacon 23 to see what's going on, and they're building sets as well, like getting ready to start filming in the new year. So for someone who does not believe anything gets made, like a lot of stuff looks like it's starting to get made. It's kind of wild.
And last time we talked to you, you had dropped tantalizing hits about a possible Sand film or show with Gary Awutta doing the honors of adaptation.
Yeah, that was years ago. That script was amazing. He wrote an incredible pilot that Sci-Fi Network basically greenlit. They were like, we're making this, and then they started running the numbers, and I think they were having a hard time with The Expanse at the time, where they had this super popular show that was expensive to make, and they were losing money on it. Like the advertising dollars weren't matching. That's the kind of the rumor that I was hearing, but it was really weird that they had like one of the hottest shows on TV and couldn't make it work. And I think the same calculations, the same kind of bean counter um, jujitsu was going on with figuring out sand. So they passed, and we ended up taking it back out, and it landed with a big streaming service, which I don't probably shouldn't name, but um, this duo, this husband wife team, wrote an amazing screenplay and just fell in love with this world. They've been living in that world for like 2 or 3 years now. Like they spent more time living with the world of sand than I have. And I just heard from them this month, yeah, in December, that they're getting the. Not only are we getting the rights back, but the streamer we were with said you can take the pilot with you. So, which is like super generous. Doesn't always happen that way. And they have this incredible pitch deck and wrote this amazing letter to me and just said like, we believe in this, we love this world, and we want to take this out as a package. So Sand still has some life. Like when I do an option deal, I never assume anything's going to even get developed. I just look at the people I want to work with and have creative discussions with because it's fun, and the small amount they're willing to pay, which is like a bonus as a writer, you know, is in a profession where you don't have like health benefits and know what you're going to make every month. So like, you know, every little option deal is a cool bonus. But I don't assume things are going to move forward. And so this will be the third time we go out with Sand, and I know that we'll find a home for it. But what's cool is having a team like this behind it. It already has so much momentum and so much writing done and so much work developed that it feels like whatever happens next, like we're already a step ahead of the game, which is really cool.
Well, I know that for a long time it was going to be Wool the movie, and then the rights came back to you. I think it was your idea, or you had been convinced that a TV show would be the better option. I mean, for a lot of your stuff, with the exception of something like, I don't know, maybe The Plagiarist would make a nice short film, Second Suicide, one film, and we're out. Whereas a lot of your books are originally released as series. Isn't television sort of maybe a better medium for your stories at this point?
Yeah, I think that might be true for most stories. It's funny you mentioned The Plagiarist. That to me seems like you would just make it a film, and we did a deal with that this year, and it's for a TV show. So someone's taken a short story and like they're trying to figure out how to do a whole TV show based on it, which is fascinating. But I think, you know, there's always more story to tell. There's always ways to expand a story into something bigger. The films, the Blade Runner films came from a short story, and it's easy to imagine an entire TV show just based on that world and those characters. The same for Total Recall was based on another Philip K. Dick short story that you could easily see a whole season to tell the story of, you know, going to Mars and saving it. I think the medium's amazing right now. Like some of the most entertaining stuff I have seen in my lifetime has been long form television, and part of it's because you get to spend so much more time with these characters. Like, you know, I think we all feel like we know Walter White really well because we've spent seasons getting to know this guy, and we have so many memories of like all of his ups and downs. Um, but Yeah, even Beacon 23, I was really surprised when someone said, yeah, we're going to turn this into a TV series. I felt like, wow, I can't imagine doing entire seasons, like season after season in this world. But then I hear the idea and the pitch and what they plan with it, I'm like, oh, okay, it makes sense. We can create all this extra drama.
It's try to like I can't even tell you which one I'm most excited about. I've been watching For All Humanity has been my number one show for quarantine. I discovered it in like 2 months, which for me is the fastest I could possibly binge 2 seasons of television. I was like, it's gone. There's no more. Where I need it. And as I'm watching it, I watch part of The Invasion. I watch part of Foundation. I'm like, these Apple guys, they're smart. They're making great sci-fi. Oh, when they get a hold of Hugh Howey, I know I'm in for a treat because they're doing it right over there.
Yeah, they're definitely not cutting many corners with their shows, and I don't know how the DNA of a company spans multiple divisions, but the sense I get just working with Apple on Wool is that it's very similar to their products, where we're not going to spam the market with a whole bunch of different products. We're going to make sure each one is done as perfectly as we can do it, and really appreciated that attention to detail and just the patience to get the right person at each position, not just on the screen. Everyone goes crazy about the casting, but if you look at the people in the back end of this, like who they're getting to direct, not just Morton doing most of the episodes, but David and the guys doing a couple episodes a piece here and there, just like their IMDb pages are just ridiculous, and the production designers, the art heads, like everyone they're getting on the show is just a dream hire, and just feel very fortunate, really impressed with these guys for being able to go out and land whoever they want at every position, pretty much.
It's Michael. What's his last name?
Michael Morton Tilden, the director, or which Michael?
Well, yeah, because I know Graham Yost is the producer of The Americans, which was a fantastic show. So I know he's
and he did Justified as well.
Yeah, another wonderful show, which increases the possibility that Timothy Oliphant's going to play solo, right?
We haven't cast solo yet. That's a very interesting choice. I think hopefully this season is we see some success. I think we'll probably know in the next month or so if we need to start writing on the second season. They'll probably not give us a green light for a second season at first. They'll see the first few episodes cut together and say, okay, at least start writing on it to get it ready. And then we'll get a better idea if we get a second season. But once that happens, we'll start. There's some interesting characters to cast, and it'll be really fun to see who they come up with for solo. I think if the show has any kind of success at all, or what we can screen for people looks really good, I think we could really like punch above our weight in who we cast for solo. Like get somebody who just, because it'd be such a fun role to play. I think pretty interesting character.
I mean, Tom Hanks is in a bunch of Apple stuff, right? So he's right there. Who knows?
Yeah, he would be interesting. He might be. He might be too old for solo though. Now, though, I don't doubt Tom to be able to play whatever he wants to play.
Well, I'm sure whoever it is going to be amazing. And when I cast in my mind, I've got all of I don't have the limitations of time, so it's 80s era Jodie Foster as Juliet for me. Although yeah. I think Ferguson's going to be fantastic. As I was watching Dune, I'm like, oh yeah, she's definitely going to kill it as Juliet, and she was in a wonderful movie. I can't forget the title because it was directed by a previous guest, Shamim Sharif. That she was just fantastic. And what was the name of that? It was the Despite the Falling Snow, I think.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Snow. Well worth your time, esteemed audience, to seek out.
Cool, I'll check that one
out. Was I gonna? Well, I want to talk about a couple of plot points in the book, but I know that for the show you've got all of Shift to draw on, you've got Dust to draw on, you've written short stories outside of the main 3, and you've got more wool stories. I had heard someplace online possibly coming. Yes.
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm working on now is the next book in that world, which won't take place with the same characters in the same place, but um, it's I've kind of, even when I was finishing up Dust, I had a second trilogy in mind, like where I would take the story next, and just laying the foundations for that now. So that'll be the thing that I hope to complete this next year. I've got the pilot to write for this new TV show that I am really excited about. I think it's one of the best like new ideas I've had for a world and a show in a long time. The idea is so compelling that it's like really hard to get anything to land, like deals in Hollywood as quickly as this came together. But I was talking about a project I was doing with someone else, and some producers asked like, what else are you working on? And I told them the idea for this world, and they were like, we'll take that. And I was like, really? I was like, oh geez, I wasn't trying to create work for myself right now. And next thing I know, like the BA people and the lawyers are all like, and my agents are all scrambling, and the deal's getting made. And I'm like, okay, now I have to write this thing. But it's one of those world pitches that when you hear it, you're like, how has no one else done this? So I've got to work on that, and working on that with a writing partner that I'm really excited to work with. And then might have some second season of Wool to write on. And then I've got a feature film script that I'm working on right now that I've got to get in shape, because I've got some people who've been interested in partnering up together. I want to get that in their hands. But all that other stuff going on, kind of the working on the Wool novel in the background and pushing that forward. And also just getting really hyped about the sequel to Sand, which is coming out in the next couple of months or few months, because we're working on cover art now and the art for the interiors, and I've seen the page layout. Traditional publishers are very slow to get anything out the door, but we're making progress and getting the final details together so we can release that.
That one's Across the Sand.
Across the Sand, yeah.
And that will be, do we have like a release window idea yet?
I imagine in the next 3 months or so. March, I'm hoping. It's killing me that it's like, if it comes out in March or April, it'll be almost a year after I finish writing it. And I'm used to readers being able to read stuff the day after I finish writing it. So this has been a painful delay, but it's the way the traditional publishing world works.
And that's going to be just the one volume, not broken up into a serial novel again.
Yeah, and that's just how it felt like it needed to be written too. So it worked out well. But I went back and reread it just last week, because I got the page proofs and just wanted to make sure everything's flowing correctly, and kind of read the whole thing because I got sucked into it. And by the end, man, I'm just like so emotional. Not because of my professional attachment to the story and my history with the story, but just the story itself and the characters. And I was like, just bawling reading the last page. And that's when I was like, man, I am really glad I wrote this story, because it was in doubt for a while. Just loved the ending of Sand, and think that it stands on its own, even with the cliffhanger, like by itself. And been working on so much other stuff, and then went sailing. And if it hadn't been for my agent kind of doing a deal without even asking me about it, I don't know that I would have written this when I did. It was the right time to write it. It just worked out perfectly.
And when you're moved at the, I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, who else would that story be more perfectly suited to move if not you, right? We're all going to enjoy it, but I mean, it's you write for yourself, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. Especially when the writing flows really well, you start writing almost like you're the reader, like you're just pushing the story forward so you can see what happens next. even if you know the plot, like you want to see the exact phrasings and how the characters are going to resolve certain conflicts and what little surprises are going to pop up. But I love when I'm so sucked into a story that I wake up like early in the morning and have to start writing immediately, and I'm writing late into the night, just the way I am with a book that I am hooked on.
And so I want to ask so many questions about what's going to happen in the sequel, and I know that I can't. So I'll ask instead about the launch. When you're partnered with a traditional publisher, I assume that changes how obviously you're launching it much later than you normally would, but presumably they're going to take care of a whole lot of stuff that you won't have to worry about. And you'll have a publicist or somebody that sets up some launch events that you'll be attending, or what does that look like now on this side where it's no longer just you at home hitting publish on Kindle? You've got a whole team behind you.
It's a good question. I've done like relaunches with publishers where they send me out and do promotional stuff, but it's interesting these days. Often the publishers are asking authors, like, what can you do for marketing for us? Like, how big is your social media platform, and can you do some blogging? And like they rely on their authors quite a bit, which I think is surprising to new authors doing deals with publishers, how much is expected for them to do on their own. The pandemic might change like some of the promotional stuff, like, hopefully by the spring we'll be doing bookstore events and things like that. And then every book is different. What the publisher can't send every author on a book tour or book signing, so they have to figure out which ones are going to sell well enough. And then I think sequels also have their own kind of challenges, where how much do you spend to market something that most of the audience is people who are going to buy it anyway because they like the first one, or not going to buy it because they haven't read the first one. So I have no idea yet what they're planning on doing, but hopefully the reason I would say, when you look at what the advance on a book is and how much a publisher is paying for it, the first consideration is like, how much money is it? Because it's, going to pay the bills and change my life in that way. But the second reason you look at the size of the advance is because it's a signal for how much marketing the publisher is going to do in order to recoup their money. So they paid a lot of money for this book, and that makes me hope that they are willing to also spend to recoup it. Then the final consideration with this book is that I did this deal with Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, and between when I turned it in and when it's getting published, HMH was bought by HarperCollins, so it's a new publisher. And for all I know, like, they're looking at this and they're not excited about it at all, and they're it'll come out with very little marketing push from them. It'll be up to me to sell the book, or there's someone there who is so excited that when they bought HMH, they got all my books and now they get to promote them. So that's how confusing traditional publishing is. By the time the book comes out, you're often working with a different editor than the one you started with. With self-publishing, it's it's your baby, and you can control the price points and all the publicity and marketing, and no one in your camp is going to stop caring about the success of that book. So it's a lot more consistent. Traditional publishing's absolute circus.
Well, that raises an interesting question, because I would think at this point, all the marketing you really need to do is, hey, Hugh Howey has a new book. Just a tweet should suffice. And we fans are going to go and buy our copy. So at this point, obviously you've got enough going on with your Hollywood stuff and with everything else that you're doing, that it might be nice to have a traditional publisher worrying about some of those things you're not going to have to personally oversee. But you've been on the bestseller list enough times now, and consistently ranked toward the top on Amazon, that I would, from the outside, assume that paying your rent is not as much of a concern for you as it would be for other writers who are just getting started. What is the advantage of going with a traditional publisher versus publishing on your own and doing it how you want?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When when I started writing, my whole life as a reader leading up to my career as a writer, traditional publishers are where you went in order to make a living, and self-publishing was what you did as a last resort. But when I wrote my first book around 2009 or so, the everything was changing to the point that for most of my career, self-publishing was what you did to earn a better income, and traditional publishing was what you would do in order to kind of like experiment, or like in a little bit of vanity sense, have your book in bookstores or go on a book tour and just experience something a little bit different. And what's, I think, changed for me is that my the people who want to read my books are going to be able to get them no matter what. So the small fan base that I have that will read pretty much anything that comes out are not impacted by how I publish. But with a traditional publisher, there's a chance of getting in some readers that I wouldn't have gotten self-publishing. So it's been kind of a circuitous route to get to where I am, where I can traditionally publish and know that I'll probably make less money, but probably reach readers that I would not reach if I just continue to self-publish. So that's the primary consideration. We started doing some deals with publishers just as an experiment, and the main difference was having a constant presence in bookstores. Doing self-publishing deals, bookstores, it's very complicated, but bookstores have this ability to get their money back for all the books that they have in their store almost whenever they want. So having worked in bookstores, I used to have to do this as well. Like, you just go through and you pull all the books that didn't sell that you've had for at least 6 months or so, and you box them up and you ship them back to the publisher, and you get all your money back minus the shipping. And the ability to return books to major publishers makes it very difficult for bookstores to carry books by self-published authors, because if it doesn't sell, they're stuck with it, and bookstores do not like that. And that's been the biggest difference. Is if I self-publish, I'll continue to, I make 70% rather than 15%, so I do a lot better financially. But there's some segment of the reading population that I won't penetrate. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I got to the point financially where I didn't have to worry about making every decision to maximize my income, and I could start trying to maximize my business relationships and my the types of readers that I can lure in and things like that. And as soon as I got to that point where I could be a little more experimental, I started having a lot of fun doing different kinds of deals with different entities. And I also have one of the best agents in the world. So all my publishing deals all have time limits on them. So we'll do a deal and it's like for 5 years, and then I get all the rights back, which I don't know. I don't have any other writing friends who get deals like that. And the reason we're able to get them is because if we don't get them, we'll just self-publish and leave the publisher out of the deal altogether. And that's an advantage. It's an advantage when your publisher gets bought by another publishing company. HarperCollins has all these contracts they have the Wool series, they have Sand and the Sequel, they have Machine Learning, Beacon 23. Every one of those books has a date that we get all the rights back. And that changes the dynamic. HarperCollins either needs to step up and show they support me so that we can continue doing business together, or if they disappoint us in any way, then when we get the rights back, we can go to Random House, or we can self-publish, we can do whatever we want. That's a huge advantage.
And the agent, by the way, is Kirsten Nielsen, correct?
Yeah, Kirsten Nielsen. She's amazing, because she's willing to say no to deals that I think most agents would jump at, because she knows she can get a better deal.
And I saw she's repping Josh Malerman also, right?
Yep. Yeah. yeah, she's got a great stable of writers, but Josh has been he's incredible. He's such an amazing writer. The quality of his writing, but he's also so prolific. That guy writes like he's written so many books that he just kind of sets aside and doesn't know what he's going to do with yet. But he's a fantastic writer and an amazing human being as well.
Well, I want to talk more about your process, and I've got a lot of specific craft questions for you. But because you're in a position where you know Josh Ballerman, you know Gary Whitta, you know you've got a blurb on your book from Ernest Cline, I know that you know lots of science fiction writers, and I was thinking, I find it a little bit amusing that even when the Wool series is on Apple, when Beacon 23s come out, when your movies come out, and you're everywhere and everybody knows Hugh Howey across the world, there will probably be somebody that if you self-publish a book looks like, I don't know, self-published. But anyway, you know all of these different writers, and I was wondering, have you noticed a consistent quality amongst these breakthrough writers, these people that are at the absolute top of the genre, that some quality you've identified and you see over and over again in these types of people? Oh, that's what separates you from everybody that wants to be where you are.
I think the thing that stood out for me because I got really interested in the people that were making a living as writers, because when I worked in a bookstore, it was really eye-opening to meet all these authors who would have to come. They would come in and give talks at the bookstore, and almost all of them had day jobs. And these were, a lot of New York Times bestselling authors and award winners. And I realized just how unlucrative writing was for most writers. And that was shocking to me. And it got me interested when I started having some success with self-publishing, to just like find out how many people out there were making a living at this. And that led to the author earnings project I did with this data guy, and just a lot of conversations, a lot of conferences, and a lot of like side conversations at conferences, like in lobbies and restaurants, and hanging out with other writers. And the thing that stood out for me was like everyone that I met that was doing well had an incredible work ethic. They were writing several books a year. They were living and breathing, not just writing, but reading and reading in different genres. But I haven't met many people who are successful who aren't like getting up and working every single day at it. And that's the thing that stood out for me, is like, if you're out working, 9 or 10 people around you, you're going to have a much greater chance of making it in this industry. And that's probably true for a lot of different industries. But I think that's been the number one similarity I've seen among my successful colleagues, is that they just work really, really, really hard. And the really amazing ones are so good at it that it seems like they're not working very hard at all. Yeah, I'd say that's the quality that stands out. Of course, a lot of them then get to a point where they don't have to work much anymore and choose to do that. But the reason they got to where they are is because they outworked almost everyone else who was out there. They were writing while other people like talk about writing or think about writing or dream about writing.
Well, I mean, you're at that point now, it appears, or if you're not now, you soon will be, where you don't have to write anymore. But it sounds like you're going to keep writing and writing as hard as you ever were, right?
I am now, but I went several years there where I was just sailing and traveling and exploring, and wasn't sure if I'd write another book. So there's, any adventure becomes routine if you do it long enough. And the writing was definitely going to get like that for me. And it was really good for me to break it up and go do something adventurous and fill myself with like more life stories or life lessons to pull from with my writing. So, but yeah, now I'm back at it, and I'm sure I'll do this for a few more years and then go sailing again. So we'll see.
But do you see yourself going full on Hollywood? This stuff does so well that they say, hey, we kind of mucked up the Rise of the Skywalkers there, our bad. Do you want to write the next Star Wars trilogy? Are you on board for that?
Oh, I would jump on that in a heartbeat, but you know, I would have done that any time during my life just as a fan of Star Wars. I do love working in a writer's room, and I like being on set. I think it's such a fun. I like telling stories, and um, I did that as a novelist because it was the thing that I could afford to do and the thing I knew how to do. But to spend more time working on scripts and being on set, I think I would really enjoy, you know, running a show or adapting stuff, or even just jumping in rooms or helping people with their scripts and um, uh, telling stories through film and TV. So, yeah, it's something I would definitely explore. The the thing with Hollywood, and the reason I'm jumping on any opportunity and deal as they come up, is you don't get to choose when to do this. I can choose when I want to write a novel and publish it at any time in my life. No one can stop me. And with Hollywood, it's the opposite. One of the reasons I got off the boat when I did is because we had these two TV shows that were really far along in development, and I needed to, you know, have an internet connection and be near an airport and be able to do meetings and help push this stuff forward. And you know, the timing wasn't what I would have chosen, but when stuff like this happens, like, you have to just give it your all and enjoy the ride. Because I have a lot of friends who've had a lot of success in Hollywood who now are having a hard time getting anything made and getting their projects pushed forward. They, you know, you just don't, you never have that freedom like you do in publishing to get your story out now. It's like when the fire's hot, you got to strike, or the iron's hot.
Well, when you're in a writer's room, and I imagine when you're doing Wool, you're adapting to a series. Obviously, it's not going to be just 5 episodes. It's going to have to have more than that. You're going to have to bring in some new things. When they're looking at your characters, things that you've known, that fans have known, that have belonged, that have become larger than you and interpreted elsewhere, and then they suddenly have like a new take on Bernard. Um, is that exciting? Is that, oh my gosh, this isn't set in stone, we can change this any way we want, and now we've got something even better than what I had originally? Or is there a part of you that knows that we all love Bernard just the way he was, this way? What would a complex character? I can never decide for sure. Is he completely bad, or does he have some points? Because he's not 100% wrong on everything. But do you have that moment where you're like, oh, you just said a thing that I want to rewrite part of this right now, or I want to write a whole new Wool story based on the thing that you, my fellow writer, just said?
Yeah, I totally get fired up from writers' rooms for my own writing, because you're just surrounded by creative people coming up with great ideas. More often than not, like, I'm usually in a writer's room working on my stuff. I'm pushing it away from what I wrote originally and trying to explore new things. And Graham was constantly in the room saying, like, "Hey, let's like kind of stick to the book." And supposedly it's like often the other way around, where the showrunner is like trying to take it some other way, and the author's like, stick to the book. And we had the complete opposite dynamic. With Zach, like, one of the first pitches Zach made to me, and he was like very hesitant to do so, probably because I think a lot of writers are really precious about their adaptations. From what I understand, he was like, he wanted to make a huge change. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh my God, you bastard. That's like so good. Why didn't I do that in the book? I wanted to go back and rewrite the book to incorporate this plot twist that's like huge. It changes everything. And I'm like, damn, that's genius. And that's the advantage, I think, of working with like really good storytellers, like I've been able to do so far, is the ideas are coming up with. Yeah, I don't want to kick them for coming up with them. I want to kick myself for not having thought of it first.
Well, when you mentioned you had you're reading the galleys for Across the Sand, because you're preparing for that to be out in the world. But do you go back and will you listen to the Halfway Home audiobook?
I haven't listened to, I don't think, any of my audiobooks all the way through. I listened to samples to okay the narrator. And I used to listen to a lot of auditions when I was choosing the narrators myself. But I love listening to audiobooks, but I have a hard time listening to my own stuff because I kind of know it. So my brain turns off. I get a little bit bored. It's easier for me to like read a galley because I can read it really quickly. But yeah, and I listen to a lot of like nonfiction in audio, but I don't listen to a lot of fiction in audio. So it's not something that I've done with my own works.
Why would you kick back with the Plagiarist and go, yeah, still a great story? Or is it, no, I'm going to focus on new stories, or I'm going to spend that time reading somebody else?
Yeah, I would rather read somebody else. I read my stuff now like only because I'm looking for mistakes as I'm proofreading or I'm doing an adaptation and I need to refamiliarize myself with stories. Because if you walk into a room where they're adapting one of your books and the last time you read it was when you wrote it like 3 or 4 years earlier, you're going to look like a fool because everyone else is like they just read it that week. It's full of sticky notes and they've got like notepads with all these ideas and thoughts and you're like, wait, remind me who that character is again. And they're like, this is your world, you created this. And that's going to be true even if you reread your work before a room. Like they're not just reading it, they're deconstructing it, they're tearing it down and trying to figure out how to tell this story. And if you're not approaching it the same way, you're going to be even as a creator of that world, you're going to be a step behind when you get into that room. So that's the main reason that I reread my stuff, and you have to reread it in a serious manner to keep up with everybody else.
Well, that makes sense. I've got a bunch of questions about stories you wrote forever ago. So we'll see how that goes. I did want to ask, I've got more Wool questions, but before I get to them, why don't we talk a little bit about Cannibal Haiku? Because you've already made your foray into children's books once with Misty the Proud Cloud. But you've got when is Cannibal Haiku coming out? What can you tell us about it at this point?
This Cannibal Haiku book is amazing, and I've done it. We've got like the storyboard from the artist, like these amazing line drawings of every page with the text, with the haiku, and then several full page color to see what the final art's can look like. And I think we probably have like half the book done in full art. So I would say this is going to be, I'll have all the assets by end of February, maybe. And then we'll decide if we're just going to self-publish it or take it out to publishers and try to do a deal. Everyone that I like opened my laptop and walked them through the story and read it out loud, they just die. It's like it's an amazing creation, and I get to like really hype it up because I'm doing almost none of the work. Like I have a hard time promoting my own stuff, but when it's someone else's genius like this, I get to like really tell people what I really think. And the artist, Maine Diaz, I think is one of the best in the business. Like it's incredible the detail that she's putting into these spreads. Like we gave her a rough idea of what each of these cannibals should be like and what their names are and their personalities. And what she's created with these characters is just mind-blowing. But the detail on, I think the image that you're able to show is like the lineup of all the characters. And there's these 10 little fairies. You see a few of them in the foreground, and the other ones are kind of, in various parts of the mid and background. And one of our ideas is there's going to be 10 of these guys on every scene. And so it's kind of like a hunt and find, but it's the emotion and story that she's able to create with all these little characters on every page is just amazing. This is a rough full color treatment that she was doing just as a test. And I've seen another 6 or 7 pages other than this. And I have spent so much time just finding new little details and stories that she's telling with the characters within the page. And having 32 pages of that is just going to be so much fun. But everyone I've showed it to, a lot of them have kids, and they were all like, when can I have a copy of this? Even the ones that don't have kids like want a copy. So there's no money in this. It's just pure joy, and cannot wait to have it out in the world.
And wondered with the with the darkness and what I read, and I know I didn't read the final draft. I read your Twitter thread. It's a countdown of cannibals because presumably they're eating each other. So there's an inherent darkness in there that's offset nicely by those bright, colorful illustrations. How do you find the right way to walk the line between being dark enough that we're provocative, we're fun, the parents who are reading it are also having a good time, without going so dark that no one's going to hand it to their child?
Good question. And this might be one of those children's books that that only adults read and hardly anyone reads. I don't know. Um, it raises interesting topics that I think people probably should have with their kids. Like, if you're letting them eat animals and not having, having them discover for themselves where all that's coming from and how it happens, that's one way to do it, I guess. But the friends that I have who are raising kids are trying to have an honest discussion with them about what happens in nature. And when you see a nature program and the cheetah is chasing down the elk, like, this is the way it works in the wild. Like, some things eat other things, and we do the same thing. We eat plants and animals, and those are living things that stop living in order to keep us alive. And I think hiding from that is like something we all do to some degree in order to get through life. And these are all fictional characters that are bright and colorful and cute, and none of what's happening bad is happening on the page. And that's part of what I love about it, is that it's very similar to my relationship with eating meat. Is I think it's wrong, and I think future generations will look very negatively on this world, this entire culture that we live in that allows it to happen on such a grand scale. But the way we're able to handle it is having it all happen outside of our periphery, so that we're not having to slaughter anything. We don't have to see what's happening. It's such a hypocrisy, really, to like feel like we're completely modern and we're doing this barbaric thing and just making sure that it's happening out of our view. And that's what's kind of happening in this book, is all the bad stuff happens in the width of the page. As you're turning the page, it's happening, you never see it. It's all off screen. So I think anything that's discomforting about these creatures eating each other should be reflected. And you've read iZombie, so you know how I deal with those kinds of issues in that book. So yeah, I hope it's discomforting for people, because that's definitely the world that we live in. And it's guilt-inducing whenever I examine it, even on a surface level. I don't know how you feel about all that, but like, I think future, like, we look back at previous generations and we're like, God, how did this institutional racism work as long as it did, and how did slavery become so pervasive, and how was like fascism able to have its moment the way it on such a global scale. And we have a harder time examining the ways that we're failing ourselves in society, that future generations are going to really look down upon. But we're definitely doing it. There's several going on right now that I think we take for granted, that our grandkids will just feel like we were barbaric for participating in.
Well, I want to explore that a little deeper, and then I've got a brief counterpoint I've been thinking about a lot. But first, to explore deeper, I was just reading Executable, and my wife and I finally got a Roomba. So it's a sign for us that we've made it. We have a robot cleaning our floor, and then you've got this story where the Roomba is kind of the villain. Watch out. And then there was a machine learning in there as well, where they're, not to spoil, but the robots, they don't feel so good about being put to task. Do you think that's another thing that future generations are going to look back on and say, look at the way they treated you talked about your boat is it you doing the sailing around the world, or is it your boat and all the
Yeah, exactly.
boat?
I'm just along for the ride. Yeah, so machine learning is the story from that I've written, where I'm exploring that idea of morality changing or through time, and how everyone thinks that they're modern, and then future generations will realize how backwards and barbaric you really were. I do think that the way we treat robots will create some issues, and I think the first time I thought about it was watching the Boston Dynamics videos, where they were like poking robots with broom handles just to test their balance, knocking boxes out of their hands just to watch them retrieve them. Knocking over a robot dog and seeing it scramble back to its feet. Our empathy engines generalize for inanimate objects, especially when they're moving and behaving like animate objects. So I don't think I don't think we're that far off from seeing the same kind of cultural debate that we have over mask use and vaccinations happening over the treatment of robots. There'll be people who don't have that empathy for them, who are saying like, these are our machines, we built them, we can do whatever we want. And then there'll be people who say like, look, we've programmed them to have preferences. We've programmed them to have sensors that can tell when they're being damaged and when they're not being damaged, and to avoid that damage. And that's very similar to our pain mechanisms. That's basically all we, that's what evolution set up for us, is to figure out when we're being hurt and to stop it from hurting. So what's going on in the processing units when they feel this is not good, I need it to stop? Is that pain? Are they experiencing anything like we're experiencing? And some people say, no, they're just machines. And other people point out like, well, I guess we're machines then. And I really think that debate is like in our lifetimes, and it's going to be quite a cultural clash. And I think we can already kind of see the lines that will divide, because it seems to be the same people on one side of this debate kind of consistently, and another type of person on the other side of the debate consistently. And I think I will probably get yelled at for being woke, as I'm like advocating for robot rights. But I think it's not just about how we treat robots, but if we get comfortable treating animals and robots a certain way, then we get comfortable treating humans a certain way. And so I think it's dangerous for us to say, like, I'm okay harming animals, but I'll somehow be able to then stop myself from wanting to allow humans to be harmed, when we know the kind of general sociopathy and psychopathy go together. The biggest predictor for people who are doing harm to other humans is like at a young age, harming animals. So I don't think we should separate these discussions by category. I think they're too interrelated for that.
Let us, I'm just thinking anybody that's going to call the author of several books about predominantly strong female protagonists, whether it be Juliet or Mollified and et cetera, you're already woke, man. That debate has been, that ship has sailed. I assume people are already calling you woke on Twitter, and it doesn't seem to bother
I hope
you.
so. I don't want to I don't want to go through life asleep.
Yeah, I mean, you told me our last conversation that peer pressure doesn't work on you, and I believe it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that can be a bad thing. I think peer pressure has a place in our world, and I think there's probably some good habits that I would have picked up had I been more susceptible to peer pressure. But I think what I used to actually, I don't know if it's not quite peer pressure, but I used to be more negatively affected by the opinions of strangers than I am now, where just general criticism, if it was something that I knew was not right about me, if someone says something that bad about me that I also believe, I actually respect that negative opinion. So when I'm reading like reader reviews and someone's telling me that I'm a terrible writer, I'm like, yeah, I agree with you, and that's completely valid. I need to get better at that. But when I see someone saying some, anything that's like just so, and the antithesis of my core, those are the things that I'm like, uh, really hurt by, because I realize that they have a completely wrong opinion of my character, and that made me realize eventually that I didn't care about people liking me. What I cared about is people like knowing me. Like I was more worried about truth than I was about positive opinion. Like when people have, I just don't care about people having negative opinions about me that I also agree with. It's when I think their negative opinion of me shows that they don't know me. And then once I realized that, I got over worrying about criticisms, because I realized they're either going to agree with me and I already know these things, or they're going to have a negative opinion that shows they don't know me. And my reaction to that is more to this egotistical, like I wish people knew me better, knew the truth, when it shouldn't bother me if people, have opinions about things they don't know anything about. That's their burden. And that was like that was about a year of my life where I had all suddenly, like I didn't have strangers talking about me or having any opinions about me for most of my life, which is how it's supposed to be. And then when I had, especially with my strong views on self-publishing, had a lot of people coming after me because they disagreed on that. I had to figure out, like, eventually, strangers aren't as important to me as the people that are close to me who know me the best. So their opinions shouldn't matter to me as much as people who know me really well. And that helped me stop caring about that stuff. But there was a period there where, people coming out and when Wool took off, it started getting so many reader reviews on Amazon, because most of the sales and most of the reads were on Amazon. And at one point, like it went from hundreds to thousands to like over 10,000 reviews, and they were so overwhelmingly positive. It was like, it was absolutely crazy. And I started having so many comments and reviews of people writing 1-star reviews who hadn't even read Wool, who were just saying like, all these reviews are paid for. And that was like the most hurtful thing that I think I went through. The idea that I was going to like cheat to get ahead, when the whole time I was writing, I was never even dreaming that I would get ahead. There's no part of me thinking I was going to have a career at this. And that kind of stuff was like just bizarre to go through. And I guess it's a testament to like how successfully I've been able to like stop caring about that stuff, that I don't even think about it unless it comes up in an interview like this. I even went through that, but at the height of it, it was like just baffling to like have people in forums coming after you, like and other writers who just wanted to tear your career down. Like I couldn't imagine getting up in the morning and spending my day trying to like, harm someone like that. But having been on the other side of it, I know that there are people that's where all their calories are spent. They're just like trying to make someone else as miserable as they are.
Well, the good news is that you don't need to do anything to counteract that. They've already sown their own justice and their own comeuppance. If they're that miserable and they're leading that miserable a life, that's not going anywhere good. You can just walk away and know that hopefully they'll sort that out later, but that they don't need a direct rebuke from you to. I always say that the suitable punishment is they're going to have to be them for the rest of their life, and that will be that should more than cover it. I do wonder just a curiosity, because I'm so fascinated by writers. I understand basic jealousy. I don't understand being angry that a writer is more successful than you, or that a writer is doing well. That is a net positive to you, because that writer doing well is going to inspire more readers, and you can't write enough books to satisfy all the hours of their life. So they're going to read everything that Hugh Howey's ever read. They say, my God, I'm out of science fiction. What will I read next? Oh, look at this. here's this book by this person that left you a 1-star review out of jealousy, and maybe I'll enjoy that. Or hey, there's a book called Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees, and it's free. I'll check that out. So they're going to be, they're hopefully going to, you're even if they start and they read the entire Hugh Howey collection, that is a net positive for all of us. You've converted readers. This is a good thing that's happened. But I'm always curious about writers and your comfort with being in the public eye, because I know you went off on a sailboat at times on your own to go out and face the sea. You spend, I assume, a long time. I assume that if you're not in the writer's room when you're writing, you don't have people there talking to you while you're writing. It's just you and the screen and eventually the reader. So you do a lot of introvert activities, and yet you're very present on social media. You've got nonstop writer friends that you talk to. Do you know where you fall on the introvert extrovert scale?
Yeah, I used to be more confused about this until just a few years ago. I heard this this term ambivert, which made so much sense to me as soon as I read this description. And we've had this kind of culturally, this shift in our understanding of what extroversion and introversion is. I think more people now understand that being like gregarious and being loud and like wanting to entertain in public or whatever isn't necessarily extroversion. That extroversion is more just getting your energy from other people and being around other people fills you with energy, and introversion is more you get recharged from your time by yourself. It's not that you're shy or any of that. So I think our understanding and definitions of these things have changed, especially with some really popular nonfiction books that have come out recently, like Quiet and stuff like that. But ambiverts, which I think probably more of us are on this scale than we know, both are true. You get a lot of energy sometimes from being by yourself, and sometimes you need to go out and be around people to recharge. And what I like about it is I do not like these very dichotomous kind of personality choices where you're one or the other. I just don't think humans operate usually at the extremes. We're all on a continuum, and most of us are in a bell curve towards the middle. So for me, there are definitely times that I just need to be by myself and recover my energy that way. And there are times where I just want to go be in public, even if it's just in a cafe, or talk to strangers, or go to a conference and be surrounded by colleagues, or go be a tourist in a busy city. So I just try to be aware that I need both, and don't assign myself to one box, because I think that's where a lot of frustration and anxiety develops, where people are like, oh, you're an introvert. Here's the formula for your satisfaction and happiness. And then when that formula doesn't work, it leads to all kinds of internal monologues and doubts and self-recriminations and things that we don't deserve. And in reality, it's like, okay, be aware of when I need alone time, and find that, and build myself back up, and be open to when I just want to be around other people, and embrace that as well.
I think everybody's had a little bit of an introvert boost forced through quarantine. Hopefully they've discovered things that they like about being alone and separate from the group, now that we're hopefully, knock on every piece of wood there is, coming back together in some fashion. I promised you a counterpoint, and I love to have ideas that I have torn apart by really smart people, because that's how they either get stronger, or then I know they're no good and I can just throw them out and be done with them. And so when I'm thinking about how future generations are going to look at us, I've been working on a project this year where I said, no people, no politics. I'm done with everything. I've been focusing on animals. So I've had occasion to study ants for quite a while, and ants are just horrible. When they go to battle, they get formic acid, and they try to reach under each other's exoskeleton and wipe some acid under there, so it eats them from the inside. Leafcutter ants will grab other ants that have soaked up bunch of honey that they're going to keep in their body and feed to the young of the colony for a while. Well, when they go to war, they'll go down and they'll grab those honey-soaked ants and bite off all their legs and carry them out alive but unable to move. And then they can feed their young with it. Just awful. And I'm reading about this, and I'm thinking about when I was in college, like almost every college campus, at least here in Indiana in the Bible Belt, there would be somebody standing outside one of the main thoroughfares with the Bible shouting at everyone, "You're all wicked, you're sinners, you're terrible." And I started to imagine, what if there was an ant while they're doing this, just shouting at them, "You're terrible, you're sinners."
Yeah.
No, they wouldn't do that. Ants they don't bury their dead. They have a trash area in the colony, and that's just where the dead bodies go, and they don't worry about it. That's it for you. And they're all on board. They're all cool with it. But is it ant a little bit more honest about who they are and what they are than humans are, where we maybe aspire to be more than what we actually are? And is that a positive idea, you think? Or is that, no, not so much, we're not ants, we should definitely not enslave robots, we should definitely not eat animals?
I think it's a huge positive. I think it's the thing that sets us apart, is that we are not just self-aware, but aware of ourselves in the greater scheme of things, so that we can compare ourselves to ants on one level, and to things hypothetically bigger than us on another level, like other sentient civilizations that could be out there, that could be ahead of us. We can imagine what isn't, and we can also empathize with things that are completely different from our reality. Like, no ant has ever considered what it is to be a human. And the fact that we can imagine what it's like to be a chimpanzee, and then wonder, okay, should we be putting soap in their eyes to make our products safer? Like, if we were a chimp and we were aware of what humans were doing, would we ask them to stop? Like, that's the theory of mind spirals that our brains get wrapped up into, which I think makes us moral creatures, and makes us worthy of being proud of ourselves for making certain decisions, and being ashamed of ourselves for failing in other ways. I would never want to lose that. And I think it should be, I think our sensitivity, we should see how high we can ramp it up. Like, why we're so fascinated with, like, how quick we can be, and how rich we can be, and how far we could go into outer space and all these other things. But the thing that makes us so unique, our creativity, our ability to do art, our genius, our ability to think up new ideas and new theories, and pure mathematics and physics, and our empathy, our ability to place our consciousness, at least temporarily and hypothetically, in some other creature, inanimate or living. All those things are so unique, and not wanting to explore the extremes of those, I think, is baffling to me. And there are people who don't want to, like, see how creative we can be, and think art shouldn't get public funding, and it's all a waste of time, and think that higher learning is a waste of our time, and free universities aren't a good idea, and that empathy is, being politically correct is, like, silly, and we shouldn't hug a tree or worry about a robot. I just can't imagine, like, us having some standout features that we don't see anywhere else in the universe so far, and not wanting to explore how far we can push those things is baffling to me. So should we embrace it? Hell yeah. I don't think we'll ever embrace it enough. I think we should dial our empathy up as high as it could possibly go, just to see what we can learn along the way, and what we can learn from that process.
Well, in all fairness, I think part of why I've been drawn to this idea of forgive us like we forgive the ants is I'm still trying to make sense of pandemic behavior. Why weren't they wearing masks? Why were they coming up to me in the store with angry eyes? I'm not wearing my mask. I support your leader, and I'm gonna cough my COVID breath on you now. And it's like, wait, do I have to think of each of these individuals as not necessarily evil, but certainly having made an evil decision, or can I let us off the hook with some kind of animal behavior? And you're right, I don't think I can.
Well, so one thing that helped me when we were talking earlier about people coming after you who don't know you, and one of the things that helped me was I was listening to Michael J. Fox give a talk, and someone was asking him about his physical condition and the criticism that he gets about it, people even making fun of him. And he really just simply, without hesitation, just said, what people think about me is none of my business. And it unlocked something for me, because I was worrying for a while there what people thought about me. And then I realized, like, when people do that without knowing you, that's a symptom of their own issues. It has nothing to do with the stuff that you're working on yourself. But then the next level was, instead of not worrying about them, was actually have sympathy for people who, I started seeing this like angry persona as you would a rabid dog that comes into your town. This slobbering, snarling, upset thing. When you understand what rabies is, it's like, it's not the dog's fault. Like, their brain has been hijacked by this disease that spreads through biting other people and going through the saliva into their bloodstream and infecting them. And a lot of social media makes sense when you think about it that way. And then you don't blame the people, not just social media, but like, anti-maskers and people who are angry in public for you not believing what they believe. Those ideas spread that way, and they hijack parts of the brain that want to belong to a tribe and have identity with past decisions and want to justify those rather than re-examining them. And it helped me to start looking at people as being victims of their thoughts and their belief systems, and not judging their character completely, and hoping, like, not wanting to waste my time trying to fix everybody, because I've got my own things to try to fix in myself, but hoping that these people it's temporary, that they'll get better, knowing that that's not always the case. But I hope a lot of people out there who are being irrational, irresponsible, wake up one day and have a loved one or a friend or family member help them get through that and become better functioning members of society, instead of wasting their time being angry over things that they should be angry about.
Was thinking about Lucas in when I was listening to Wool again this week, and he's slight spoiler for, are you listening to me have a long conversation with Hugh Howey? You haven't read Wool, but slight spoiler. When Lucas is reading, the information available about the truth that's been hidden from him while he's been living in the silo, and he's learning about the earth and all the colors and all the things that were before. And I was thinking, oh, he's falling down a QAnon hole, but it's real. But
Yeah.
That's that moment. He's discovered this online source. Well, it's not an online source of information, kind of, sort of. And he's having that experience. But unlike me, when I go off half-cocked reading about flying saucers, this is good stuff, man. Get it in your head. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe if you have to live in the silo either way, maybe it's better not to be aware of all of that. I don't know.
I mean, we're all victims of it. I think the number one thing you can do to gain freedom in life is to realize you have very little freedom to begin with. Freedom of thought and freedom of will and freedom of action. The more you realize you've got these constraints, then you become at least aware of them and can push against them or try to undo them. It's like being if you're a puppet, like, the first thing you would hope you would realize is, like, there are the strings and here's what they're doing, and okay, here's how I can resist against them. And I think a lot of people, it's easier just to, like, pretend that those strings don't exist and that they have free movement. But seeing these things in other people and actually growing up in a very religious community and having to undo some of my own programming, is maybe very sensitive to it now. And so I always assume that I'm wrong about everything. Like I think all the things that we brought up, I've spent plenty of time thinking like, am I wrong to think these things? Like, am I being crazy to believe this about robots or animals? Like, should I care? Should I just like eat animals guilt free and stop thinking that future generations are going to look down on me? Like I'm constantly questioning and doubting my belief systems rather than spending my time like going out there and yelling at other people for their belief systems. And I've changed my mind about like big things over the years because of that, and hopefully we'll continue to do so. But I think I think it all starts with just wondering if we're wrong about everything. I think that's a really healthy stance to take.
Well, I've got watching the time, and I've got all kinds of craft questions. We'll never get to all of them. Before I get there, though, I know last time we had talked a little bit about, you and I both have religious upbringings, and now we're science fiction fans, so a little bit of commonality there. And I know last time we talked, you were all the way to atheist, and I was there for a while, and then the world got crazier and crazier, and I started to feel like the guy in the horror movie that's still insisting, no, the monster can't be real right before he gets chomped. Like, all right, no, there's clearly something up with reality, probably a simulation, something going on that we don't understand, and this is not that alarming to me because I live with things I don't understand every day, and I still get up and get on with my business. So if anybody were to know the answers, no one would be more surprised than me to find out I was that person, and I don't expect to know the answers. But where are you at? Has skepticism went over completely at this point? Still completely on the atheist side? Somewhere in the middle? Where do you fall as of this recording?
Yeah, I think, well, for me, atheism is like a default position. And I think that the theism is something that has to be like put into your brain by somebody else. And you either accept it, which is really easy to do when you're getting it very young and you're accepting it the way we accept language and just absorb and adopt it as our own. But none of the theistic beliefs and explanations for why we're here and how we got here make any sense to me. So I've rejected them all so far, but I'm open to someone coming up with an idea that that makes more sense. I think part of being an atheist doesn't mean that like I reject all future explanations. It's just that reject any that have been handed out so far. To me, they're clearly the invention of people from an earlier time who were trying to explain how we got here, or tried to prescribe behaviors within the tribe to get people to either, band together, keep out foreign thought and invaders, make more copies of themselves, get more power for the cleric class, whatever. They were attempting to, and the combination of those things, and assuage people of the fear of death and all sorts of, it's like a Swiss Army knife of functions, religious systems. And they're all clearly that to me. And none of them seem like divine wisdom handed down, because none of them were more advanced than the people who espoused them. Like we didn't get mathematical proofs handed down to prove that this mind was greater than our own. We didn't get moral systems that were ahead of their time. They were always a slave of their time. So if all of a sudden we had, hey, here's a book by a religious order, and the first thing it does is solve the 13 hardest problems in physics and math that the greatest minds have wrestled with for the last century. That's on the first page. I'm going to start reading more about whatever this is. And I'm going to maybe, okay, someone's invented an artificial intelligence without telling us. Maybe a quantum computer has been turned on somewhere, and someone's using some of the proofs that popped out of that as their entree to a new religion. Like there might be ways to be skeptical about it, but at least it's showing signs of thinking that are beyond our own. And I haven't seen that with any of the theistic systems, not just epistemologically, like showing that they understand how we got here and how the universe works better than us, but also ethically. Like none of these systems are really generations ahead of where we need to be thinking about our philosophy and place in the universe and how to treat each other better. The very minimum, they're just like, please stop killing each other, which toddlers are, just as quick to say, like, stop hitting me and I'll stop hitting you. So they all are very simplistic and basic to me compared to what we would expect from something that was otherworldly and either running the simulation or creating all this or whatnot. Like germ theory not showing up in any of the ancient religions is quite an oversight from these gods. That can save a lot of lives just by saying, like, there are wash your hands and you'll save a lot of lives. And so you either have to believe that these gods, like, I don't know, why would any creator not give you be like being a parent and not telling your kids very basic things that extend their lives and their happiness and their health. And if you really believe these religions, you have to believe that these creators were like, we'll let you figure that out on your own thousands of years from now after much suffering. It's inhumane and it's cruel. And if that were the reality, if these gods ended up being true, I wouldn't worship them then either, because I would, if they have the ability to alleviate suffering and have chosen not to, then they're not the good guys. And I would rather burn in their hell for eternity than, bend my knee to someone who's filled the world with such cruelty for their own amusement.
What? Have you seen any flying saucers or ghosts since the last time we talked? No. No. Okay. Well,
Not that I know of.
We can move directly into some story questions and then maybe think about landing this thing. But I did want to ask you some craft questions that only you can answer. Starting with a Wool question. So there, without spoiling, there is a key moment where Juliet might be dead. We've been following her, and we believe you'll do it because you've already killed some pretty prominent characters. So she might be dead at this moment. And rather than continuing with that, you flash back to a segment early in her life where we learn where she gets the name Juliet, and we see a bazaar deep in the silo. So when the reader's on the hook like that and you're flashing to something that's completely unrelated, one, how long can you get away with that before the reader throws up their hands and says, come on, man, let's get back to where what I'm holding my breath over? And then two, when you do that, what does a scene like that where you can sneak in any exposition because your reader's turning pages as fast as they can, what does that scene have to accomplish to justify its being there rather than going on with the immediate action?
It's a good question. I think you can get away with it for a long time. The end of Sand takes another great badass character of mine named Vic and puts her in a situation where we have to assume the worst. And I'm comfortable like never going back there and exploring what actually happened. And you'll see in the sequel of Sand that I'm willing to torture people further along those lines. So I don't think there's any expiration date for drawing out the tension of what could be happening to some characters. I think when you're doing a flash, when you're flashing away from action, it doesn't have to be with the same character. The example you're talking about, you're going from Juliet being in trouble to Juliet in childhood. Usually when you're using multiple points of view and bouncing between frames of reference in a story, it's so that you can leave one frame in a cliffhanger and jump to another story and take that to a cliffhanger and then come back and resolve this other one. And when authors do it really well, you're always pissed that they're jumping away from one character. You're like, oh, don't leave me there. But then when you jump to the other one, you're like, oh, that's right. I was really worried about what was happening in this other place. And I'm so glad that we're back there. And we're catching up with what's going on here. And then you get to a point, you're like, no, please don't end the chapter there. Like, keep going with that. But then you jump back to the last thing that you were like upset about having to leave. And if you do it correctly, you're never bored just staying in one linear storyline. And you're always upset that you're being taken away from the story until you realize that what you're being taken away to is the thing that you're upset about being taken away from last time. So you're constantly like upset and excited. And that's how I think most great like page turners should be developed, where you're constantly bouncing between at least two storylines that you're equally enthralled with. War and Peace is the best example of that. Like it's in the title what it's doing. You're going from what's happening on the front to what's happening on the behind, the lines and back on the home front. And each story is so compelling that you're excited to get back to it constantly throughout the whole book. When you're jumping from a character to backstory like Romeo and Juliet, I don't think you can get away with it for as long, because you're not telling where the story is going to end up. It's going to end up with her in adulthood. So there it's more just about, can you add to this character's personality and their history in a way that the reader is sucked in and fascinated. But you couldn't go several chapters like that. Like, you could not stick with that past without just drawing out the suspense to where you didn't care about what was happening during the present. So I don't think you put a number on it, but I wouldn't want to go more than a few pages in that kind of a framework. But if I was bouncing to someone else's story that was equally compelling, I could go chapters or entire books before I came back and resolved what happened to someone in a cliffhanger moment easily.
The nice thing, without spoiling, but the nice thing about flashing back to that character's backstory is in my heart, I know there's no chance that you're going to tell us this whole backstory if you just killed her. But maybe you might.
I definitely would.
One of the great things about Wool is you've established at that point you will shoot the hostage. We have to believe you.
Yeah,
You get a reputation of somebody that will kill characters that we love.
These are all human characters too, which means they all die. And I think it's I think it's a disservice to them as a writer not to explore the end of their story, but just pretend that they live forever. Like, I'm not writing about gods, so every character of mine you've ever fallen in love with, they're dead.
Do you know their death in all cases?
Not in all cases, but the ones that I really care about, I've at least thought about it, like how their life probably ends. And if I care about them a whole bunch, I definitely want to write that scene. I don't want to avoid it to protect myself. I've written Juliet's death. It's out there in some short stories that are supplemental to the bigger work. So it's no spoiler that all these characters die. It's just a question of whether or not I care about them enough to actually spend time writing about their death.
Well, you've written several robot characters. We talked about the possibility of the vampire that's going to track down the author that's writing the series and get a doctor. And a character like that might live forever. Is that something that I've had a problem with this recently in my own work. Can you identify and empathize with a character who is immortal? I found it was a little bit difficult for me to start thinking on that longer scale of what that would actually look like and how you would be.
Yeah, I think you nailed it when you use the term longer scale, because there's really no such thing as an immortal character. Definitely some that exist on longer scales, but the sun's going to swallow the earth at some point, and the universe is either going to expand out and freeze, or it's going to contract and compress everything into a singularity. either way, you know, human thought, robotic thought, AI thought, none of those things are going to be possible for on an infinite timeline. So can I empathize with long timeline lives? Maybe even more than I can with short timeline. Like what would it be like to be an AI that is trying to eke out every last, you know, ounce of energy in the cosmos and fusing the last stars together and absorbing the last photons as the universe just dissipates to the point that it realizes it's not just the end of itself, but the end of everything and the memory of everything. There'll be nothing left to appreciate art. That it'll be like it never happened. Like I can empathize with that so completely because that's a story about all of us and an existential tale. And every individual human life is tragic when it ends, but it's a very small part of that story. So yeah, I think realizing, like taking to the next level and realizing that even what we call immortal is not even close to being immortal, takes it to the next level with our just appreciation for the small amount of time that we get here and trying to make the most of it.
Well, that makes me think of course, Second Suicide, where the characters are aware that, you know, Cylon style, they're going to be respawned in the ship when they die. And I love that, you know, they're described as with tentacles and eye stalks, and I can never quite put together what the, if I can I draw these creatures? I don't think I can, but I sure would love to see a photo of one and see what the invaders in Second Suicide look like. And I wondered as I was reading that so much of that story is devoted to sexing, which what a wonderful thing for me to bring up on a Middle Green themed podcast, Middle Green themed podcast. But whatever, I love that word sexing. Like that's my preferred go-to verb from now on. And he's thinking about that. As I was rereading, I was thinking, so here's a fellow who's jealous of his roommate Kerr, who's going to be having a sexing relationship with his new roommate. And I wonder, are they still doing individual pairing? Maybe when they go on, I think if the ultimate reward is if they fight long enough, they can maybe go back to the home planet and start a family and live that life. But while they're in battle and they're going to die and be reborn and theoretically live forever, I wondered, why wouldn't they have some kind of new norms about sex and sexing going on? Why wouldn't there just be like the orgy? Hey, you're back from the battle. The orgy is there. If you want to play PlayStation, whatever our version of that is, it's over there. Whatever you want, man. It's your time before you have to go back to battle. But there's this focus, and it built this sympathy for us with this character because we've all been a little bit jealous. I've had that feeling. I'm like, oh, I feel for you. I wish that you were having a relationship also. So I was just curious because that sexual relationship or lack thereof is so much at the focus of that story. How did you go about deciding why that would be the style of these invaders? Why that would be their expectations of their personal relationships?
So that's a great question. That's not even important for their culture that I have that in the story. What the reason that's there is because as a short story, it's really hard to develop empathy for characters in just a few pages. You have to do it in paragraphs. Like, how am I going to make someone care about this character in a very short amount of time? And having them deal with unfair jealousy like that in a bad roommate situation is preying on our experiences. Like, I think you can just suck in, you know, the majority of readers can crack that short story and immediately care about this character, which is what I needed to happen for that story really quickly, for all that was going to happen to them later. So yeah, that's just basic storytelling to like come up with a predicament for the fictional character that, you know, almost anyone reading it will sympathize with, in order to get them to like almost pair bond with this character so that you can then take them on an emotional roller coaster for what's different about this world. So that's the technique answer. The bigger philosophical answer is like, I think if you make things too alien, then there's nothing to learn from these stories. So the fact that they're so advanced and they're conquering every world that they encounter, but still have to deal with jealousy. Talks a lot about our human condition, like all the progress that we've made and all the advances that we come up with, and we still have to deal with so many base emotions that are left over and no longer useful to us and are actually detrimental to us. We still have to, we're still saddled and riddled with those, is sad and fascinating to me. So I definitely like working those into stories for my own exploration, for sure.
That makes 100% sense, because it absolutely works as a story, and maybe the question says more about me than it does about you. why I'm so curious about these alien sex lives, and I want you to write a sequel that just answers those questions for me. Well, I'm looking at our time. I've got a question about Plagiarists, and then maybe we'll think about calling it a day, and I'll put the rest of these questions on the dossier for episode 300 or whenever, who knows. The simulation might end before that, and I'll just be so grateful to have had this time that we've had so far. But for today, I wanted to ask about the Plagiarists. One, I love this idea that this character can be such a great reader that it makes it impossible for him to write. And you phrased it so beautifully. I'm doing a poor job of it. If I could find the exact quote here. Well, shoot, I can't find the exact quote as fast as I would like to. But the idea that you're sneaking past with your bad writing and trying to take a place among so much good writing. So I love the idea of someone being too good a reader. And then two, I love the idea that even though these simulated worlds are going to fall apart, and then eventually it's all going to end, which thanks, now I have a new new existential threat to worry about. What if somebody pulls the thread on the simulation? Although I suppose that's no different than death. I'll just suddenly not exist and it won't bother me at all. The question was the idea that he is going through, and he's the plagiarist because he's looking for works to take out of these simulated worlds and bring into this world and bring those. And then there's without spoiling, there's that art is what's worth saving about these worlds. And I know there are other people that are focused on the scientific innovations and other things that are going on, but his job is to focus on the art. If you, so one, I want to talk about, is reading, when can reading be a detriment to being a writing? And two, if you knew that you and I and everything in this world, all the Spider-Man movies are just going to be over, the end, the simulation's called, but your work is going to go on and is going to inspire another universe beyond this one. Is that worth having done? Would you take solace in that? Or is it just enough for you to have done it on your own?
I would hope they were saving something other than my work. If that's what's coming in this universe. I love the movie Yesterday about the world like losing power and everyone forgetting the Beatles, and this just a handful of people remember them, and one guy was a musician and he like recreates their body of work for the world to remember again. Like that's the kind of art that people like. It would be the Shakespeare's Folio that someone should come and like grab from this planet if they're if we're going to get destroyed, or the Beatles are not a bad choice for like what to take on to another planet. I think in some ways, like writing satisfied for me the fear of my life being too short and dying. Like I remember most of my childhood and 20s were really consumed by the fact that we have so few years here, and like how are you going to leave? What impact you can leave, even if you have kids, like that's a temporary thing, because there's even a line from Wool about like the most we can hope for is to be remembered 2 layers deep. The idea that our grandkids would know us, but our great grandkids won't know us, and our great grandkids won't know us. So like you can't even really achieve immortality or stave off the fear of your mortality through your offspring. But there was something about having, and I wasn't setting out to do this, and I never thought there was any real resolution to this. And knowing about the heat death of the universe or the big crunch, this doesn't help that either. But after I read my first book, there was some hang up inside of me that really disappeared immediately. And I've talked to other people who've created things, whether it's a company or an idea or an invention or a piece of artwork, that have the same feeling. And I don't think it's an accurate feeling. I think it's our brains playing tricks on ourselves. But there's some part of me that feels like I've written a story now that one person will read 100 years from now accidentally. I don't know how they'll stumble across it or how that will happen, but someone will read iZombie 100 years from now and laugh out loud at something or have a new idea, a new thought. And knowing that that's out there and that I'm leaving that behind has totally made me stop worrying about my mortality in a way that even sailing around the world didn't quite touch as deeply. I don't know what that is. I don't know why that is, but I do know that it's a very true and palpable thing, and that I'm not the only one who's felt it. And I think that's some of what I'm exploring in the Plagiarist, is this idea that creating while we're here can make our time here worthwhile and give us purpose beyond this existence. And I don't think that has to be true in a physical sense. It's just true in an emotional sense, and that's plenty true enough.
I think that's the perfect note to end on. Where can esteemed audience find you on online, on social media, and all that good stuff?
Unfortunately, you can find me everywhere because people are stealing my identity and using it for romance scams. So there's like thousands of Hugh Howeys on every social media platform. But I usually have a blue check mark beside my profile. Those other profiles might be more entertaining, so follow whoever you want. But I'm pretty easy to find usually. I've locked up the Hugh Howey pretty much everywhere. So HughHowey.com and at Hugh Howey on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I feel bad for the guy in Australia who's also got the same exact spelling as me, but he's a little younger, so he didn't. I got all the platforms before he did. So he's a lot taller and better looking than I am, but he's the imposter.
Last I checked, robkent.com is a playwright, and he's not even writing plays right now, just sitting on that domain. Come on, buddy.
Move on.
I wanted to ask you, I thought about asking you about that, but I did see you've been involved in a number of scams online. Is there anything you can do about that, or can you just have to warn people and walk away?
Yeah, I mean, don't give money to strangers online. Like, I don't know. There's the people who fall for these things are just the victims of awful scams, and there's no way to educate all 8 billion people how to be skeptical. So it'd be happening if it was my profile or not my profile. I'd be sad about it either way. But yeah, it's just unfortunate seeing how prevalent it's been. Had the FBI call me in the middle of a meal earlier this year because they had, they were using, these scammers were using one of my fake profiles to like help, convince someone in a romance scam to launder money for them. And it was a big enough sum that the FBI was involved. And I told them this has been going on for like 12 years, and they were shocked that like this was the first time someone was like reaching out to me from a major bureau about this, because the problem's obviously gotten really big. But hopefully we will get to the point that people can generate fake images and don't have to use like existing social media posts like they've been using mine to do this, because this is not how I want to like outlive my time on earth. But the way it's going right now, like long after I'm dead, there'll be people pretending to be me to like launder money and scam people out of their hard-earned money. It's like absolutely bizarre to be involved in any way.
Well, hopefully, Wool's coming to Apple, and I know you're involved. You've been filmed for a lot of the special features, talking directly to the camera, and this is going to boost your profile further. And then the scammers won't be able to use you anymore. You'll be too famous, and people say, "I'm not falling for that. That's obviously Hugh Howey."
That's my only hope. I just want to be so famous that people can stop pretending to be me.
Well, coming on this show is, I'm sure, a huge step in that direction.
Hopefully, this helps.
As always, esteemed audience, for all the interviews with all the best editors, literary agents, authors, all the world's best people, head to middlegradeninja.com. Download your free copy of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees. It will change your life. Thank you again, Hugh, for just an amazing conversation. And I always sign off with the phrase, God willing and I'm alive. I'll see you next week. And I feel the need to elaborate on that, given the nature of our conversation. When I say God willing, that is a shorthand metaphor for the universe, for all of reality. Nobody specific in mind, just the chance and randomness of life, just keeping me a little bit humble. God willing, the universe willing, and I'm alive. I'll be here, and I hope you will too. See you next week.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Rob.